State of mind by looking at Star Trek. They were always right. They always knew exactly what to do. They would go in there with guns blazing. The prime directive, the non-interference directive, was the thing that Kirk quoted right before he always then ignored it.
Now, Captain, what are you going to order your men to do?
Concentrate your phaser fire at what appears to be its head.
Kirk continually intervenes. He continually disrupts and destabilizes governments.
Photon torpedoes, fire.
Commence firing and maintain.
Your orders are shoot to kill.
Oh, but there's that prime directive in the way again. Can't interfere.
He seems to embody the Vietnam War era idea of America as a policeman who interferes in other people's business.
Klingons call you a tin-plated, overbearing, swaggering dictator with delusions of godhood.
Is that all?
No, sir. They also compared you with a Danubian slime devil.
I see.
And then they said that you were...
I get the picture.
The Enterprise went out into space and kicked ass and took names. That's what the show was about, because that's what America was about.
All this power surging and throbbing, yet under control. Are you like that, Captain?
You can count on it.
Star Trek made things like space and exploration look pretty darn sexy. You had Captain Kirk, the hound of the universe. You had the unreachable Mr. Spock.
Your face is wet.
Most women basically looked at him and said, well, give me 5 minutes with him and he'll be a lot more reachable. So Star Trek was a very sexy show.
Well, Gene had wanted very, very much to show women in a more positive point of view and women that were stronger, because he said they exist in the world. But that failing, then he kind of pulled back a little and said, okay, so there are pretty things. And that's why we ended up with little short skirts and big bouffant hairdos. And, you know, it was a very sexist thing to do, but he did it.
Gene Roddenberry would drop everything he was doing when it came time to approve a costume, especially if it was a costume on a female. He had an eye for the ladies. It didn't matter what it was, a story conference, cutting a film, the daily rushes, whatever. He would stop and he would immediately proceed to make it better. And by making it better, one means that making it more revealing and less voluminous.
Am I more presentable now?
A bit.
There is something subversive about costumes which show the entire side of a woman's body, or that show a cross-section of her breasts, but not any parts that will get it censored. Yet those are always done in the service of turning women into sexual objects.
Kiss me.
There was that gravity-defying element to the costumes that made them very painful for us in the real world, trying to live up to those standards.
I'm sorry, Shannon.
Both Beverly Crusher and Yeoman Rand in the series Bible are described as walking with a natural poise of striptease artist. And I think that language evokes the ways in which Roddenberry saw women as equals in miniskirts.
Lieutenant Uhura of Communications.
Ah, a Nubian prize. Taken on one of your raids of conquest, no doubt, Captain?
No doubt.
She has the melting eyes of the Queen of Sheba, the same lovely coloring.
I stood up to meet a fan and turned into the face of Dr. Martin Luther King. I was speechless. And he told me that Star Trek was one of the only shows he and his wife allowed their little children to see, and how much they loved the show for the concept of the show, and how much they loved Uhura.
Excuse me, Captain Kirk.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Scott.
What a charming negress.
Oh, forgive me, my dear. I know that in my time, some use that term as a description of property.
But why should I object to that term, sir? You see, in our century, we've learned not to fear words.
He said, your being there changes the face of television forever. And you've opened a door that must not be closed, must not be allowed to close.
Whoopi Goldberg said to me the first day she ever came to work on our series, because one of the curious things about The Next Generation was that this quite successful movie star asked if she could be on a syndicated TV series, and she didn't need to be doing this job. And she said that when she was a child growing up in New York, she had watched the original series, and there on the screen was this black woman who seemed to have a position of authority and was respected and was sexy and attractive and had a good time and was always in the center of things. And at that time, Whoopi, as a young girl, said to herself, well, one of us made it.
She said when she was 9 years old, she turned on the television. She's living in the project. She screamed through the house, come quick, there's a black lady on television and she's not a maid.
Open the channel, Uhura.
Frequency open, sir.
People felt Uhura made an impact simply by being there. That's what Martin Luther King said, that is simply seeing Uhura on that ship gave representation of the fact that his dream for integrated society had come true, at least by the 24th century. On the other hand, she was simply a glorified telephone operator who said over and over, hailing frequencies are open, Captain.
Try GSK 783, subspace frequency 3.
But, sir, that's a call sign for private transmitter.
I'm very well aware of that, Lieutenant. Try it.
No program on American television has promised so much and delivered so little. Star Trek's promise of a utopian society which draws on many traditions of utopian fantasy in science fiction. A world where of tremendous tolerance, of infinite diversity and infinite combination, as the Vulcan philosophy would place it. And yet a world which continually fell back on stereotypical treatment of race, gender, and increasingly sexuality. A world that reflects the fantasies of a liberal LAPD cop.
So it is a utopia for yuppies, for megacorporate America, for the lovers of the military and folks who live that way, people who are satisfied with superficial, tokenistic representations of gender equality, racial equality, multiculturalism. It pays some lip service to those things. It seems to feel it needs to.
Star Trek is just as fallible as anything else. I think that the reason it's been so attractive to audiences over 30 years is that it, unlike a lot of science fiction, it offers a future that's better than the one that we're living in. I think Star Trek has always been about a group of characters that had a family-like quality to them, that people wanted to go and visit every week.
Yet in the late 1960s, not enough people were visiting. Star Trek was not thought to be a big enough hit, and after 3 seasons and a mere 79 episodes, the series was cancelled.
No one felt anything would ever happen with Star Trek again. When it went off the air, I believe it was in June of 1969, it had half of what its rating had been.
I had mixed feelings when the series was canceled at the end of the 3rd season. I was relieved to some degree because I was distressed about the direction the stories were taking. I was not happy with the quality of the work we were doing. I thought by and large we were on a downhill slide.
I guess we weren't sufficiently entertaining.
Star Trek just faded away, and no one felt there was any future to it at all.
We put on a pretty poor show, didn't we?
Only I could forget.
It might not have proved its mass appeal, but it was acquiring cult status with a rapidly expanding number of passionate devotees.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise. Its 5-year mission, to explore strange new worlds, to seek out new life and new civilizations, to boldly go where no man has gone before.
I was aware of there was a phenomenon. There were Trekkies. There were people that, you know, were really obsessed with it.
Trekkers.
Really?
You got to be PC. Trekkers.
Okay. Trekkers. Don't ever do that again.
Okay.
Star Trek embodies a way of life. It helps you to try to make the world a better place by starting in your own backyard.
It doesn't make us look like we're freaks or something enjoying a science fiction show. Together we're kind of like the oddballs, but yet we're for the future, and it's changed my life a lot. I can remember from when I was 10 years old, I was only allowed to watch certain TV shows, and Star Trek was one of the only ones. After my grandfather had watched it the first time, and he says, okay, just as long as you don't wear the ears.
When you meet other Star Trek fans, you kind of bond with them almost immediately. My first Star Trek convention, these people didn't know me from Jack, but yet everybody was here, you know, guiding me here and guiding me there. My new family literally started that day.
A lot of people's lives have been affected by it. I mean, people who have made life choices because of their exposure to Star Trek. People who saw opportunities presented or ideas presented that motivated them in a positive way. And I think I've sensed quite a bit of that.
Well, the headline news from the Whitewater trial today occurred outside the courtroom when Judge Howard dismissed an alternate juror from her responsibilities. The woman raised eyebrows at the federal courthouse when she appeared each day in a Star Trek uniform.
She is the Whitewater juror everyone has ridiculed.
I decided to go in my uniform because the uniform, of course, represents the Trek principles and the Trek ideals, and that is personal liberties, personal freedoms, and, of course, justice. And so for it to be worn in a courtroom, of course, is appropriate.
Since day one of the trial, she's attracted nationwide attention that eventually got her thrown off the jury. Wednesday, Adams was caught giving a TV interview to the tabloid show American Journal. When Judge Howard learned she talked to the media, he dismissed her from the trial.
I answered questions about why I was wearing the uniform. Because the media was making such a circus out of it, I thought if I answered their questions, they would go away.
So we won't see her around the federal courthouse, but she does have a message.
So live long and prosper?
Adding an even more...
It's not that it's a obsession or something that totally consumes my life, but certainly the ideals of Trek are ideals that I live by, and so I'll stand up for those every day, 24 hours a day.
Be it known to all members of the Federation Alliance and the fleet, Lieutenant Bobby Adams will be promoted this date. She will attain the rank of Lieutenant Commander with the duties and privileges therein. May I present Lieutenant Commander Barbara Bobby Adams.
The media has tended to have an image of Star Trek fans as a fat, geeky guy with pimples, rubber Spock ears, and a velour uniform sort of stretched over his bulging stomach. That image includes sort of notions of the fan as infantile,